Hi everyone, in this latest video, I'm going to host Vivek, Phalak, and Devendra Laulkar, both AI pioneers, for a candid chat about AI and all the different things that are happening around the world. Both of them have built great companies in this space, Avoma and Graas, and we get to learn from this video around building the company to running it on day-to-day basis, using AI to build a competitive advantage and be able to secure that advantage over a long period of time. You also get to learn how to harness the various possibilities as well as talent from both outside and within the organization. So do watch out, and I believe you'll enjoy this episode.
Welcome everyone to Startup Grind Pune. I am not sure like how many of you have attended our previous events, but to just give you a quick introduction. So Startup Grind Pune community is a part of a global Startup Grind community. Uh, the community we have built is around the values of how we can help create an ecosystem where everybody can connect with each other, learn from each other, and be better. As they go out from this event today, or be better version of themselves. One of the key elements that we always follow, and a big value for us, is to always make sure that we are all inclined to give, because as much as you give, the more you enable others, and then it comes back to you in terms of creating value. So, through this event, and we do like startup and events pretty much every month. So, do sign up, leave your number so that next time you are again aware of the next event that we do. But during this event, we make sure that, while, we have our speakers today, some, very prolific people today here. So, we will learn from them. So I see that the room is as diverse as India. I think you were asking what theme to pick. I think we have to pretty much do everything today.
Sure. That is the beauty of India, right? Everybody is here.
Yeah, yeah. So we have the technology people, we have the business people, we have
Yeah, we're going to change the topics based upon the audience. So.
Yeah.
No, I think I mean people here are already experts at what they do, right? That is the interesting part of our AI. That today no one can actually claim themselves to be the only expert here. It's more about collaboration and figuring out. And I think everybody, this is a starting point for a lot of companies. So very excited to do it.
Right, right. So let's get started without without any more delay. So Devendra and Vivek, why not we start with a brief introduction about your beginnings and where did you grow up and build your companies till that point. Let's have some sort of a chronological journey.
Okay, so my name is Devendra. Again, I'll give you a very brief history because I want to talk more about AI rather than companies. You guys can check on LinkedIn. But I graduated from MIT College Pune. Worked at a startup early on here in Pune, which was doing digital film restoration for a couple of years. Moved to US, completed a master's, joined another small company, and moved to California and joined Pulse, which was a news app in 2011. As a, I was an Android engineer, worked on Android 1.0 at that point of time. My first startup at that point of time was building tools for mobile app developers, right, on Android and iOS. If you've heard of Test Flight, for those of you in technical, so it was like Test Flight for Android at that point of time. Nights and weekends kind of a project at that point of time, but then sort of started taking off, and we started a company called Vessel. It was building mobile analytics, A/B testing, push notifications, in-app messaging, and the AI in there was trying to figure out, who to send the right message to, so to speak, right? So that was the basic idea behind it. Sold that company. Another company was Marketo. They did not have a mobile platform, so they took our platform and integrated our platform into their bigger digital marketing platform. Still there, by the way, running as far as I know in there. Was at Marketo for a couple of years, and then finally I left Marketo and started Avoma, which is my current startup. We are an AI meeting assistant, so what we do is we record meetings, we transcribe them and generate summarize notes for all. And then once the data is in the platform, you can do a lot of things: coaching, training, predictive analytics, all of that can be done once the data is in the system. So very brief, that's what we do.
Vivek.
Yeah, we are a proud Avoma customer for a few years, so I can vouch for the product. So yeah, thank you for having me here. And I think this. So I've been in the Pune ecosystem, the startup ecosystem for almost the last 10, 12 years or more. And I think kudos to Ayush and to kind of get this initiative going again. And uh, so for me, like I'm born brought up in Pune. I did my engineering from Pune University, then later did my masters from Carnegie Mellon in the US. Spent almost 10 to 15 years in the US, worked for larger companies like Oracle. Then more as an engineer, then worked as a product manager at various startups. Was involved in the whole university ecosystem in the Bay Area. Worked on various early stage products and whatnot. Right? So I've lived that life, but then kind of around 2011, the startup that I worked for got acquired again into Oracle. So I thought that is enough of a lesson, right? So time to move back to India. That's something I've always wanted to do. Came back here around 2012, ran a data IoT sort of company for a couple of years. A lot of interesting stuff, but then it was very lonely, kind of working and trying to acquire customers and also get involved in the tech at the same time. Also, I mean, it was a hardcore techie, and this is what I really wanted to do. So, bumped into my co-founder in Pune, right? And he was more business. He had done some work in India as well. So we took on this whole problem of growing e-commerce, right? And a few major decisions that we took, right, and still haunt us right till this day, is that number one, trying to focus on e-commerce in 12, and bigger than that, I think we really focus on India. And that was, so we were always bullish. Of course, now everybody believes in the India story and whatnot, but I don't think that time it was quite different, right? And having worked and lived in the US and other places, it was very clear that e-commerce is bound to grow. But for us, it was more like we had to really open up the market here, right? So took on a lot of things. I mean, initially you can consider us at the very beginning as a Shopify, when there was no Shopify here, right? So a lot of the customers on Lakshmi Road and various Bangalore, fashion streets and whatnot, those are all our customers, right? And it was very interesting because India, is all about diversity. And you mentioned the diversity here, but India itself is a very diverse country. There's very unique products in every single city. And I mean, those don't reach other guys, right? A person who has moved to Delhi from Pune cannot access Chitra is good or whatever. So that was our initial premise. But having said that, after getting 100 or so customers in 2 years and building out the platform, we really figured out, hey, what's the real problem here? Is it tech? Is it doing business in India? What is it? Right? I think those of you who focus on India would understand what I'm trying to say. So then really we said, okay, you know what? Forget all this. We are going to open up the market, right? So we put up a social e-commerce marketplace known as Coolio, and at that time it was more like an Insta plus Pinterest of products. Did fairly well. Ground up, we got a few million subscribers, and Facebook reach, which is what we use because we are short stack for money, rivaled those likes of Deepika Padukone and all those, right, at that point. So did well, but again we found it hard to kind of get continued funding for that certain thing, right? So then that was like the third pivot where we said, no, you know what, we're going to focus on the enterprise. We got a few very great early customers in India who had deep inventories, they had good brands. Those are the guys we took online and started growing them, right? So today, till recently, again, we have many of these customers, name brand Indian guys in the food, Apple, name it, right? That's when the real problem 5 years back struck us, that it's not about setting up stores or doing that, it's about growing them, right? Which is, we went to our roots, and which is when we really started building out our data platform and to really grow e-commerce. Now, pandemic of course pushed the entire B2C like out of the water, and really everybody is talking about that. It was no longer us trying to convince people to go online. Uh, we recently, like a couple of years back, we got acquired by a Singapore-based company. Now we are Graas, right? Growth as a service. And essentially, it's kind of the same journey. We use AI and data to really grow e-commerce, whether it's customer acquisition, it's storefront experience, this entire supply chain. How do you bring growth at lowest cost? That is our brief thing, and I'll be happy to talk about that also. But this is the journey so far. Yeah.
Great context setup. So, Devin, I'd like to ask from you if you can summarize for everybody in the room that what has really happened with AI. Like, how do you see this, in the context of AI, where we are? So, what happened? Where was it? Let's say pre-ChatGPT. What happened post-ChatGPT? So,
Yeah.
where exactly we are in AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we started in 2017. So we have sort of the ChatGPT company, and my master's is in actual machine learning, but that was in 2010. So I've seen the journey from that point onwards, and obviously you can go back and go beyond that as well. But it is interesting to see. So a lot of the early play, again, I'll talk more pre ChatGPT and or pre GPT, post GPT world, so to speak, right? So when we started, a lot of ideas during that time was that, hey, you need to have data, you need to have your own data, enough data, labeled data that you have, and that's going to be essential for getting any kind of AI model out there, right? So when we started, we had absolutely no data, right? We were just like, hey, when we started, we actually labeled our own data. So we built our own tools for labeling the data. We hired our own in-house people because meetings are very private and personal. No business will want them to, sort of issue it out somewhere else. So a lot of privacy concerns and all of those things. And we actually convinced our initial set of customers that, hey, we will actually have people who listen to your calls and generate notes for you. Right? That's how we got our labor data. We used to actually listen to the calls. We hired people later on, or like the founders themselves used to listen and generate that labor data. Then we developed our own tooling, which was not quite up to the mark in, again, 2017, 2018. They're just starting, there were companies that were sort of starting to provide these services, right? And you had big people like Google and Amazon. Like Amazon has an office here in Pune, by the way, which does a lot of this work for Alexa. So that's how we started, and then you sort of develop your own models out of that. You deploy them into production. Again, you do testing. Again, you need that validation. So we spent about a year, year and a half, getting our initial set of models in, and they were good enough where you could bootstrap. We could sell to our customers, hey, this is all AI. And before 2000, a lot of companies were saying AI, but behind the scenes they were like, actually have humans in the room, right? So that's when the technology sort of started shifting a bit. Things were getting better, GPUs, and the whole genesis of why we started Avoma was that speech to text was becoming more accurate and more cheaper. Again, after 2017. So all of these GPU-based improvements were slowly taking off. And then what happened, after GPT is that anyone can come in and just have the model ready. You can have open source models, you can customize them, and you can deploy them, right? So that process has got short-circuited. So you'll see a lot more companies in our space who are trying to build something similar to what we do. Post GPT, sort of OpenAI again has democratized everything. You can have API access, you can pay as you go. So a lot of these things were not as easy available pre-GPT days, right? So generative AI has really allowed democratized AI where a lot more folks can now, integrate this into your companies or workflows or businesses, and new startups are starting in this space.
Vivek, would you like to add?
No, absolutely. I think generative AI, the whole part about democratizing AI, right? So for us, it was democratizing e-commerce and getting it to the normal seller, and then kind of that same thing you are seeing now in the tech world, where AI is no longer the domain of few data scientists trying to tweak away. It is reached more of the mainstream, where businesses are now talking about, hey, how can I use AI to really improve my workflow? How can I bring productivity to my people? So there's a lot of positives there, but again, I think there's there's other issues that we need to talk about AI, and there's optimism, but there's also to kind of taper it down and get down to reality also, right? So there's a lot of reality checks that have to happen. But having said that, this is, I mean, pre-ChatGPT, we were in the AI space, and now post-ChatGPT, right? There's quite a lot of interest, a lot of new use cases. For us, again, one point I want to add to this is the importance of data. For example, for us, yes, you can talk about AI and you can use the old algorithms, and now you can use LLMs and whatnot. But one principle that doesn't change is the amount and quality of data that you have, right? And if you have that, then great, And for us, that's what we've been acquiring and to build. And right now, even if the AI performs, it's really the observability that's on the data and the quality system that plays a major role in this. So there are lessons that you can continue carrying forward, but there's a lot more optimism now in the AI space, where huge improvements can be done, right? And again, I mean, talking about AI, if you will listen for a second here, is that Graas, right? To give you context, we are more like a Bloomberg for e-commerce. That's how you can think about it. So, which is why there's so much data coming in, but then we need Gen AI, for example, to let a user even make sense of all that data. You can always throw lots of insights, records, and dashboards at people, but again, there's a time when there's an impedance mismatch between what the users are looking for and what we are throwing at them. So this is one example of AI where you can really level that field. So going back to the democratizing topic. Yeah.
And Vivek, you can elaborate more on how democratizing of AI has led to the change in the business models, if you have seen any, especially in your own journey or overall as well, generally speaking, like what changes are now coming in terms of the way a business would approach the market or the opportunity or the business overall?
Yeah, so I think that's a very key question. I think so. So the last 10, 15 years or so has been the era of SaaS, right? Software as a service, and kind of you put all your data behind paywall and then have APIs and other people access it. Now it's more like companies want to run their own AI engines, right? For whatever reason, right? There's privacy concerns, and I own the data, and now it's like I have the data, I can just build whatever on top of it. If I'm a pharma company, I'm a healthcare giant. So people are kind of at that level, is that, hey, I've been collecting data for all these years. Why can't I just plug this AI on top of it and enable my systems together, right? Earlier it was stringing together lots of SaaS systems. Now it is like stringing together lots of different AI agents for that matter, right? So that is a world where now, as companies and product companies, we really need to start thinking about reaching out to businesses even further, right? And instead of thinking ourselves as those individual point providers of a solution, can we get into the workflow of those people and really understand, really focus on the human aspect of AI more than tech, right? And this is where it's hitting, because there will be few people who will be building models, but what about business, and how do you kind of bring down those concerns of AI, insert the humans in there, have those feedback loops going. So very exciting world, different way of thinking, but there's a lot of opportunity here for startups.
Right, right. So talk about opportunity. Maybe Devendra, you can tell us more about the competitive advantage or disadvantage due to AI. Because, like you said, one of the things I could pick up was that you were doing something which now many more companies can claim, which could be a threat also for a business. But probably you can do some things that you can now do it at a larger scale than you were able to do earlier. So maybe you can share, weighing in on both options or the context around building competitive advantage with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI it enables you to do things at scale, which probably you could not do earlier, right? Even if you have humans in the loop, there's going to be limits on uh, how much you can do, right? That's the whole premise of having the machines do your work. Uh, but then you have to balance it out again with. So it's a different kind of, when you introduce AI, it sort of changes the way the business process works, right? So one of the main things that I say is that it's a probabilistic model, and so then that changes the entire relationship that you have with the where the user expects something. Typically, when a user is interacting with a software program, you click on something, you expect something to be done, right? So that's the nature, unless there are errors and all, but you can leave that aside. That's a given, right? With AI, it becomes changed to a probabilistic model, right? So what happens is that you might actually get the output, or you might not get the output. You might not get the correct output, right? But you can do it at scale. So there's a fundamental shift that happens between the user and the software and the experience that comes in between, right? And I'll tie it back to the competitiveness question that you asked as well. So it's important for startups, and we've seen a lot of competitors in our space. I mean, this is the first thing that a lot of people jump into, like meetings, because there's a lot you can do with meetings. But it's important to not just get the AI and the models right, but you have to integrate it into the workflow, as you mentioned, right? And that's actually where the competitive edge comes in. So it's just not about, okay, you develop an AI which is, let's say, 90% accurate, and maybe you have some more training data, you make it 91% accurate. That's all great, but how do you actually make use of the AI models and integrate into the workflow of the user, like any business process that they're doing, whether it be interviews or anything else. And the challenging aspect of just integrating it is dealing with this probabilistic nature of AI. So that involves a lot of opportunities where you need to actually design the user experience and a lot of other elements along with the AI problem that's there. Right? So there are some cases in which you can just build an AI company, like image generation. Right? You have certain aspects where just logo generation or image generation, and so there are certain fields or areas where you can just sort of make it pure AI company. But the larger, I think, piece of the pie is in all of the other business process enhancements that are there. So yeah, that answers the question.
Right. So you still need to solve the problem, basically. It could be AI or non-AI.
Yes.
It could be enabling.
Yes, and AI typically adds, as I mentioned, it adds more problems in one sense because of the probabilistic nature. Yeah. The output that you get is, might be correct, might not be correct, and especially if users are trying out new products. I mean, the AI can get better with more data, but I can personalize the AI to a particular company, right? But I need data for that. So you need to use the product for a month or 2 months. You need to give me some inputs, what you're trying to do, and then the system can get a lot better, right? But how do you set that expectation in a SaaS product especially? Right? So enterprises, okay, you have a different, sort of setting, but if you have a SaaS product, then that first impressions matter a lot, right? So, yeah.
You mentioned a key thing which is very important to understand, is the probabilistic nature of AI. And I believe that, from what we read in the news or the glamorized part,
yes.
Everybody expects AI to come in and create magic. So maybe you could elaborate more around, as a business owner, how do you go to your team or to stakeholders or to customers, educating them about what is possible and what is not? Because I think outside in the world, everybody is expecting that there's a magic wand that you carry now.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, like, internally as well as externally, both, as you mentioned, right? I'll talk about the internal part. Again, this is what inside the company, what's happening. We're developing an AI product, and how do we grapple with internally when we are launching a new product or new feature? How do we deal with this, right? So one of the important aspects is that AI is almost sort of never done. The feature is never complete in one sense, right? So typically when you take a software product, you have some specs, you write it out, and you put the feature in, and it's done, right? With AI, that's not the case, because again, the output might be there, might not be there, and it keeps on changing, right? So I'll again give a concrete example. So we have a coaching product, right? So if a sales call, we give a sort of a scorecard. Like, how did the call go? Did you speak too fast? Did you speak too slow? Did you cover all the topics? Did you answer all the questions that were asked by the customer? Did you set the next steps? All these are important. If it's a sales meeting, these are all the things that the salesperson should cover in that meeting, right? And gives you a scorecard saying that you covered these 3 points, these are the areas of improvement, and all of these things, right? So now to develop this feature internally, right, you have to, first the AI people need to go in, look at the existing data, build their own training models, do all of that job that's there, come up with a reasonable AI model. Underlying there will be many systems, including OpenAI, internal standard NLP, all of those things that are there, right? But once, and then it again needs to go to the UX, right? The user experience and how do they set it up, all of these things are important, right? Once you have it into production, then you cannot just say, okay, now this is done. Right? This feature is there, it's complete, now you get nice dashboards and everything. That's not the case. You need to have the feedback loop either from the customer, but again, customers, I mean, you'll not get that much feedback from the customer. They'll see whether it works or not, but from an individual perspective, why did it not work in this case? Why did it work in this case? All of that fine tuning, you need to continue to do it on a continuous basis, right? So that aspect never goes away. And I'm just talking about one product and one feature. Similarly, we have 10, 15 different features. So then you need to have the observability, as you mentioned, like whether it's working or not, how you can improve it. It's a never-ending process in one sense, right, that you have to deal with once you're doing the AI. So it's never done. It's almost like never it's packed and done, and then it works as it is. Some things keep on changing. The AI models keep on changing, and one more thing, it's a black box, right? So some things that were working earlier will stop working. So how do you deal with that aspect, right? And it's very difficult to communicate with customers. So internally, you have to sort of have peace with this, that hey, it's never going to be done, first of all, right? You've got to always have more training data and all of those things. And externally, then you need to communicate, hey, it's going to get better, give it some time, or it was not working, why it's working now, or all of these aspects need to be handled. Right?
So, Vivek, maybe you can just elaborate further, especially from the CTO's context. It must be hard life for a CTO to manage different expectations and to enable that mindset within the company. Has it been?
Yeah, I mean, see, the thing is, the CTO's job is kind of goes across the board, right? I mean, the entire kind of building up the product and evangelizing and making sure that people really get what it is. But then eventually my role then basically I focus more on the data side, right? Because that's where I figured out after the acquisition, that was our biggest pain point. It was no longer about building out products and stuff like that. So then having said that, right, okay, cool, there's this data quality, making sure data is coming in at the right, and that data is trustworthy. That's the time when you can really now start talking about AI. All right. Otherwise, it's just about experimenting and hey, it's cool. But then what I see out there is 90% of experiments that are happening, they never go live. Right. There's lots of cool ideas now. More and more have to be more business focused. They can't just be tech focused anymore. Really, if you don't understand the whole UX aspect, the usability aspect of that, then that AI is not going to go very far. As an example, I mean, there's a lot of other things, but beyond the traditional.
So, AI talent is one of the challenge areas that we come across. So, again, as business leaders, what has been your take in finding AI talent and growing AI talent internally or finding externally? So, what has been your
Sure. So if you talk about the technical side of the talent, pre-GPT it used to be more data scientist and ML engineer and traditional ML, right? And I mean that hasn't changed because in a business you're still going to require forecasting, you're still going to require those models and whatnot. They are not going away, but the scope is now wider, right? Earlier ML would have solved only a few use cases. Now he says there are like 15 other features and products that are relying on AI. So now where are you going to get the talent for, right? So the point here is, but at the same time, there's lots of engineers out there. There's a lot of other people who are trying out things. So the talent war, as they say, is not about those very specific ML people. Yes, we need those, but at the same time, we need people who are who are more cross-functional in nature, that they are able to actually understand engineering, because a lot of current AI is all about engineering, right? How do you string together these systems which used to be very deterministic, now they are probabilistic in nature? How do you deal with all of that? You still have to have the core data science part of it, the business understanding, and of course cost, right? Yes, of course you can throw everything in GPT-4 and give you, but is that really going to be feasible? So talent is a problem, and I think anybody kind of trying to get in, be specializing in one of your areas, be it UX, product, whatever, but also try to understand the engineering side or the data side or whatever else, the product side. Uh, and trying to acquire that talent is again a huge problem. I think everybody has that problem. So internally, again, you can always set up those teams together, break them into 4 or 5 teams, and then give them the problem to solve so that they can cross learning, involve the customer. So probably no one size fits all.
So, what are some resources that come to mind if you were to direct people, if they wish to start a career in AI or learn more about AI? Any resources that
No,
you
so I
found
think
useful?
one of the things is in the past it would have been just a com science engineering person or somebody who's deep into computer science and then trying to get it. Now AI is accessible to everyone, right? So whether you're a mechanical engineering student, you are a commerce student or something else. So there's, see, at the end of the day, computing is now part of every single industry, and it's becoming a horizontal skill. So that is there. So learn all of that, and there's enough resources out there, right? There are YouTube channels, there's Twitter feeds, and, but really, in whatever industry you are, learn the use case and try to figure out where the efficiencies are. And the way I think OpenAI, for example, or any of these APIs make it very easy to start. So get started, I would say, as an individual. Don't wait.
So, Devendra, you have your team, being run both in the US and India, and in fact, a lot of DNA of the company is based out of US and so on. So, are there any particular areas that you have seen that are done better in US, particular areas done better in India, and then any lessons that again budding leaders can learn from here, that what value that can be created that is still a gap today in India, that anybody striving to create growth today could work upon?
I think the gap has shrunk over the years. Definitely, the exposure that folks can get over here almost is at par with what you would get in the US. Just hammering down on that point that we mentioned is that you see a lot more folks in US having that T-shaped growth, as the T-shaped sort of skill set that people have, where they're deep in one area, right? Be it machine learning, AI, all of these things, but they have enough breadth across different areas where they can. It's easier for them to understand what the business is trying to do, or what the feature is trying to do, what that outcome that we want, or what the customer expects the AI will do, right? And that's the important thing, right? Again, like a simple example is it's a lot more easier for me to explain the sales process to a US person versus a person in India. It sales, to an engineering person, right? Like, hey, this is like how sales calls gets run, and this is what they do, and we are trying to do coaching for this, and this is what we are trying to enable. Right? So that's that exposure, and now the tech side. Pretty sure folks who are here, same I talk to folks in US or here, they have the same tech skills, right? They understand all the nuances of GPT training, this, that, what's there, right? But why we are doing this and what outcome we are trying to achieve, then that gets important. And I think that gap will also now decrease over time, because again, the younger generation has more access to a lot of these products and services and everything. So you sort of see in B2B context sometimes it's difficult, because I think the B2B maturity is still sort of catching up in India as compared to US, but it will happen. It's a matter of time.
So this question, the next question will be for both of you. In either order. So like, what do you see the world becoming, with AI, especially the positive impact that you are really bullish upon, that AI would be able to help on, as we see the world grow?
So yeah, I mean, there's lots of positives, of course. The whole thing is about augmenting humans, right? And so that all the boring routine stuff is done, and then now everyone can really step up to whatever they want, right? Their creative field, and really get the maximum potential out of their own work, right? So that's definitely the positive impact, because a human with AI and a human without AI, I'm sure there's going to be a gap now very soon, right? So somebody who understands their field, but there's just all these limiting factors, right? The AI is going to help them get to that, right? So really, I mean, I am very bullish about the human part of AI. Although I'm a technologist and I love those models and I like getting into the infra part, but I think this is what I've come to realize is the human aspect of it. And again, there's also people right now. Of course, there's a lot of biases in the system. There is that whatever. But if you really put your mind to it, you can use it in the right direction too. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just getting started. That's my, we have sort of automated, or we are using AI in the digital domain more. But actually what we want, or as linked the other day, someone was saying is that I don't want the AI to write my email or to generate images. I want the AI to, wash my clothes and do these other things. But obviously it's easier to do it in the digital domain, right? Because you want the person's creativity to sort of do the artwork, but we're in a lopsided view right now where the AI is doing the artwork and not the daily chores. But having said that, I still think that we are just getting started, right? There's a lot of interest and a lot of these things that are happening, and as more and more computing power becomes available, we'll be able to do more things in the physical world as well with that. So, but yeah, I think we're just getting started.
Okay, so with those thoughts, I'll take a break on the panel, probably opening it for everybody else to ask questions. We'll keep it one question for each person, and let's see, like, if time permits, maybe the other two. But let's think the most important question that you want to ask to start with that.
Yeah, so I think we were trying to solve a problem that is relating to the topic you have mentioned. The data has to be clean. So in current world, I think there is a challenge in enterprises for adaptability of the models, and because of huge amount of data they already have, and they don't want to play more with their data. They just get hands-on with the technology, but don't play with their data. So how to tackle that challenge so that we can also help them clean up their data and make it a trade-off between the technology and conventional thinking.
Yeah, and I think so. As I remember, I think from you said you are really, your company is trying to tackle the analytics side of the data, right? And kind of that is our use case also, right? Although e-commerce has lots of use cases, but we decided to take on the hardest, which is this, right? How do you get LLMs to deal with structured data? And here there's a thing, you can say that, hey, I will wait for my data to be perfect, and then I will start deploying my use case, but then the interest will go away, right? At the same time, so that's where experimentation starts, right? So what you can do with your entire data set, you can always do with a smaller data set, and prove out the business model, prove out the user experience, all of that. But at the same time, the education has to be there, that especially when dealing with data, right? Data as in where people rely on these for decisions. Like our guys rely on this data for their day-to-day decisions on spends and inventories and whatnot. So it can't go wrong, right? So here's where education is very important. That those systems at the data engineering level have to be in place first or in parallel. But things don't go live till, I'm sure, because otherwise it's going to be a garbage in, garbage out, which is a traditional data science problem anyway.
So how do we solve this probabilistic nature of AI? Because just like you said, unless it is 100% sure, I cannot take it into my live production, and probably that's the reason that there are a lot of POCs getting built, but the ratio of POCs to a live is still very low. So yeah. Anything you take around that?
I think you have.
Yeah, I mean, so you basically you can do it in step-by-step fashion. Like our traditional way, as I mentioned, is that we took down the notes. Again, human notes is taking on notes, meeting notes is a difficult problem, right? So what we did is, again, we said we first do it full human way, right? Again, we tell the customer this is what's going to happen, right? So it's not like we are selling AI and then we are doing something else. So we tell them, and then you get to a stage where instead of now taking the full notes, you review the output of the notes that are the AI generated, right? So rather than typing everything out, you have and then that's how you sort of slowly bootstrap the problem, into getting it out, and you can still have that review process, right? We still have people, by the way, who review it. The system needs to get better. How do you make sure? One of the nice things is that, I mean, in some cases you do get the probabilities, like whether this output is how correct it is or how incorrect it is, and you can build those systems on top of the either it can be before it goes out, like before the output is shown to the user, or it's afterwards, right? And you can sort of, but you have to build all the systems in place where it's like it gets reviewed, and then if it corrects, then what do we do? If the let's say there's an action item, right, and this action item is not actually mentioned, it's incorrect, you mark it as like not there. But then you inform the user, you don't inform the user, what should happen in that case, or if the user has already taken some actions, like we allow, for example, if there's an action item, you can just click on it, it will send an email, it will actually generate an email, right, for you. Right? These are all the things that are now possible with GPT and LLMs. So all of these are like workflow and complex UX process, and you would design the system in such a way that is there. And it's a slow and steady thing. Like it's not done. All of these things are there right now in production, but it took us many years to get to that state. So,
and taking this a little bit further, right? Especially for the eval is very important. The evaluation criteria, right? I mean, yeah, when you are a programmer, people tell you to write unit tests first and then you write your code. But I don't know how many people really do that. But in this case, it's very important to set up the evaluation criteria first, then run it, because as the complexity of that solution increases, the error rate goes and gets amplified further down, right? Because now this use case of yours, right? The very first experiment is going to be, can I take my tables, can I ask the question, and it generates an SQL. Okay, that's how people start with this area. Very soon then you say, hey, it's not one table, damn, I have like 100, 200 tables in my data warehouse for just one customer. How am I going to do this? Then I'll break down the problem, and then I will split the tables into parts, and etc. etc. Then I'll look at the question and look at its complexity. So very soon, what ends up like a simple text to SQL ends up becoming an agent-driven system that has 6, 7 steps in it. And some of these are AI, some of them are human, some of them are traditional models. The error on one, like a small 0.1% error on one, the other one has 0.2%, whatever. End result, it's going to get amplified, right? So then how do you build those effects? So having that evaluation criteria, your own evaluation criteria, not the benchmarks that are out there, it is very important, I think. I mean, tangibly.
I have one question. So, if you see in AI space, right, the democratization of AI, we have a lot of open source systems, right? Right. You can see most of them are from the US only, not from the India. What is the reason? Is there a scope for any company to start, open source their product and then so?
So are you asking open source as in the AI system, or are you asking
the
model? The model.
Not model, even as a product, right? You can see all around, right? That is there, the Ghibli for all. So something like that. You can say it's open source, it's MIT license, and you can use it for personal skills. But at the same time, there are something like Sonar 2. It's open source as well. Then there is a enterprise or developer version. So, but if you see the similar product in India also we do have, but not most of them are open source. Most of them have you have to connect with the sales system. So, is there any cultural difference between India and US in that case?
Would you open source Avoma?
No,
maybe it's a business.
I think that's the point. But there are open source companies based out of India and US. That's there. You asked about AI and specifically why AI is there, or AI models are
I
from
think it
US.
started more probably in AI space because in AI space I have seen most of the companies open source their product and then they are doing it.
Well, I mean, USC traditional open source products are there as well, so I don't see that as a this thing. If you talk about AI models, why are they generated over there first? Well, that's because it's a resource thing, frankly speaking, right? So resourcing, and also when we are catching up, uh, like for example, the initial GPT models are based on Reddit data. A lot of it was Reddit, and there are a lot of data sources. A lot of it was Reddit data, and Reddit is mainly used in US. So and that's why it's in only in English. Although they added more data sources and all of those things, it also was not that useful for B2B use cases initially. A lot of hacks you have to do on top of it. Well, GPT, we had early access to GPT 2, I think, or whatever was there at that point of time. So you still need a lot of now. Reddit data was not sort of labeled data. I mean, it was semi-labeled, you can say, but still, like you have all of these things. So you have enough data and you have enough processing power. You can do your own LLM or.
Yeah, I mean, having said that, there's a lot of interest in the whole Indic LLM, India LLM sort of thing, right? About Indian languages and whatnot. There's work being done in the IIT, Chennai and whatnot. Again, very resource intensive, and where's the data for it? I think talent is there. I think who's,
No, but not any individual or private companies, right? So something which you see from the US based, right? Open source system. So even for the text voice, there is a TT OQA, right? They have open source their TT. So similarly, you don't see similar one from India.
There are, I mean, there are a little bit research groups, but yeah, I mean, definitely.
so if you're talking
So
about the
cultural difference is there.
Yeah.
It is there, right? So we are behind in that sense, right? I mean, it's
And
a
is there any
function of.
scope? So from our side to
So you
have
know,
that
the
business
product-
model to open source it and then to have a
It's going to take off, right? As again, like that gap has reduced. Shrunk. If you see 2000, 2010, so on and so forth, the gap has shrunk quite a bit.
I think it's a open source is a business
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
I have some question. If you see this ONDC platform, right?
Yeah.
Which is in e-commerce space. So in the ONDC now they work with agriculture space also. They have a team which is working, and then they would like to see that the B2B buyers actually and the sellers. Sellers could be farmers or a large aggregators who put the material. So in that case, actually, what could be the gaps in terms of putting it, projecting it on a scale from the technology perspective, right? I come from the physical background, I can talk about it, but then from the tech perspective, to because the scale is huge, there are the whole India produces n number of products under perishable and non-perishable category, and then there is a whole bunch of industry which consumes it and then puts it into forward value. So what could be the gap, mainly from the technology perspective?
So you're talking about scaling ONDC itself. I didn't get the question.
So ONDC has created a kind of a platform, right? And then they have the buyer app and the seller app.
Sure.
So now the objective I'm talking about the B2B side, they have the food apps and on the Paytm you can order the food and all that is there. But on the bulk side, so there could be because you come from a technology background and you work in the e-commerce space. So probably from that point of view, we can bring in at our level, we can bring the buyers also, sellers also, we can enable them on the physical side. But on the tech side, what could be the gaps so that we can work on a proper scale and project it on a scale, because scale is there, but it is
So
not
we,
always-
as in, you mean you are building a product based on ONDC platform and be able to bring the buyer and seller.
We present as a buyer app also and the seller app also. But from the tech perspective, because we are talking about data and the data is not there. If you talk about data in terms of how much is there in the warehouses and all that, those are not wired till now. As well
So
as
have you guys explored ONDC? You have then, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the thing, but I think ONDC is still a maturing platform, right? And there's a lot more things to be done. But again, if you see the whole premise of how UPI grew, okay, I think there is promise there. Okay, and I think I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great initiative. People are still coming onto it, and there are people who are interested in building apps around it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to be done. Again, data, if you're talking about your sellers' data, whatever, that problem remains, right? I mean, there was a time when we had to manually take catalogs and kind of scan them and put it out there. That's when you could actually start an e-commerce business.
But what could be the solutions, the possible solutions for the ecosystem from the tech developers point of view?
I don't know, I might be wrong, but it's mainly like a marketplace. Actually, the more buyers and sellers you have, the more solutions sort of will come in. Maybe you have to build a layer on top of it.
You'll have to build a layer, you'll have to make sure those connections are there and you're analyzing the data.
So
you're
there is
figuring
no
out.
gap per se from the technical perspective. Technology side, the solutions are there. What you see is that more buyers and more sellers should come on board, and the technology will make sure that volumes come online.
Yeah, I mean, all these things have to come together for it to, really take off, right? And it's happening. I mean, it's not.
On B2B side.
B2B. So maybe there's something we can talk offline and try to understand where you're coming from.
In the near future, right, there is a problem that from the user interface UX part, right, there's going to be more of a speech to text and all those things going to happen rather than the typing and with fingers, right? So how do you see that in the future? That particularly for the SaaS products, right? What is the future for those products where the speech to text is the dominant technology?
I mean, Avoma is, I think you guys are dealing with it, right?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the speech to text. There's a lot of interest in this. There was a wave of products are using based on Alexa and those platforms, but they didn't go anywhere. Mostly, I don't know if you have used Alexa or Google Home. The products are mainly used by kids. It's harder to chat with someone. It's a hard problem in that, just like using that as a primary mode of communication, right? And so Alexa and Google Home did not take off as much as it was expected. Like people had to build apps on it and use it as a platform. There are a bunch of challenges. Discoverability is one thing. It's harder to discover. The other problem is also it's a slow medium. You can read much faster than converse with something. This is the same problem when you have with ChatGPT apps. So apps on there's a marketplace inside the OpenAI has a marketplace now where you can add plugins or extensions and all of these things. Again, the problem has been with discoverability and how we use it on a daily basis, and it's much slower to beat weather or whatever, emails or whatever. It's much faster to open your phone, look at it rather than sort of chat and ask about it and this thing. So that's a big barrier that's there. But there are niche use cases in this space as well. I know that Apple is doing something with Siri now, where they're trying to make it much smarter and a primary mode of interface with the phone. But yeah, I mean, in the speech to text, we work in a different mode. We work with meetings, so meeting on Zoom or Google Meet, then it's a different kind of this thing. But primary mode of interface with the computer, still there are a lot of this bandwidth and a lot of the other issues that
Yeah, and I think great point here is that Apple and these other guys, right? The models are now going to come on your device, right? Which is going to tackle a lot of these problems of latencies and the entire round trip every time you talk to it and all of that. So it's going to get better, right? And also the language capabilities. Like people we ran a chatbot in 2016 or whatever, right? And at that time, of course, physical chatbot. And the language that comes out, people interacting with it, it's not English, it's not Hindi, it's not Marathi, whatever, right? How do you get all of that? So the learning, I mean, if you can bridge the gap between a normal, two people conversing, if it can come to that point, then it can be as smooth. Adoption will pick up, but there are environments where speech to text might be the only way, right? Where you don't have something in hand or whatever. Those are the places where you get started first.
Any other question?
After this ChatGPT, we see a lot of new companies opening up, and they're trying to solve certain use cases, like in case of interviews or customer service, and they're building, packaging the AI agent-related interfacing in this. What are the do's and don'ts? Because these AI agents or AI models are also evolving. So today, if Claude is ahead of ChatGPT, it could be in 3 months somebody else will be ahead. So if you're too committed to a particular AI agent or model, then you run a risk of losing the on the accuracy part, and then you will start losing to your competitor because you're following a wrong model. Are there any, especially with you guys, are there any do's and don'ts and your previous experiences, how you manage that?
Again, I think this applies to both of our industries. I think this is a very big challenge, right? Those models are not static. There are newer models coming up, APIs that are more accurate. Even the same API today, which is performing, may start getting less accurate tomorrow, right?
Compared to because there's a longer line, like it becomes short line because there's a longer line to all that.
Yeah, I mean there's tech changes happening, right? Initially, the context window was very small on the GPUs. Now it's quite large. The cloudy models were behind. Now you see that they are really good right now. But so this is an ever moving thing. So then you will have to really, if you are looking at an agent-based architecture, you would have to actually start building those abstractions on top and be able to actually run two models in parallel. Maybe have one model judge the other guy. We are doing some of these things here. But competitive advantage is a big thing. I mean, there are companies that came up 1 year back who were really ahead of the curve. Now you don't see them anymore. This is a risk of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have seen the same thing, by the way, in speech to text. Right? So when we started in 2017, the best player was IBM Watson. Right? I don't know how many people know IBM Watson out here. So one of the things that we did is that again we have to sort of judge where things will go, and this becomes this thing. Like we could have sort of said that we will build our entire speech to text model in house, right? But again, the market was shifting rapidly, right? But even then, it was like a 6-month to a 1 year shift. Now you'll see a few months kind of a shift, but at that point of time, it was like a 6-month shift. So we did all of those things. So we have, for example, integrations with about 8 different speech to text platforms because things kept on evolving, right? We also have our internal speech to text platform because again, for things like custom words and punctuation and all of those things, our models actually are better, right? So speaker identification, our models are better, internal models, right? So there are many nuances around it, but sometimes, in fact, again, for custom words, our models are better, right? So we had seen the shift. Okay, it was IBM Watson, then Google was great, then Amazon was good, then Google again became great, and then startups started appearing. There are like 3-4 different startups, and right now also in some cases Google is good, right? In some cases Amazon is good. So we sort of do that benchmarking and all of these things. But we did not we could have spent like, hey, let's spend $100,000 in building the base there, but we said let's not do it. Similar things happen with LLMs also, by the way. But again, the context window has shrunk every 2-3 months. You see new things that are coming up.
Yeah, but I think I continue to be bullish about smaller models, right? And if you can actually use one of those open source models, freeze them, right? Customize it to your purpose. It may not even be fine tuning, just use the prompt engineering and you get some amount of stability there, right? As opposed to building your thing on shifting sands like the traditional API. So really it depends on the use case. There's enough out there.
And we de-risk it to a certain extent because we have multiple sort of providers actively in production that we keep on again benchmarking using it. So this is a way to de-risk it along with our internal things, so we can switch over to all of. It's a risk management thing. If you rely upon third parties to a certain extent, you have to have those plans.
Yeah, I think that was in this same context, the adaptability again is still an issue, I believe, because I mean customers may not trust that the model we are using, on top of what data it has been trained and all. So that is still a challenge. How we can overcome that very soon? That is something I'm looking for.
Which is why the open source movement really has to pick up. The data sets have to be open. The training has to be open. There are some great initiatives there, but again, I think we're still getting there.
Compliance is again another thing. So some people say we don't want, then we say okay. You have those sort of contracts in place. They cannot use the data for their training purposes and all those things.
My question is for both of you, and I would request you to answer from business perspective, not from tech perspective.
Sure.
So the question is, what type of startups or businesses should seriously consider integrating generative AI with their customer offerings for sustainable competitive advantage and as a matter of future survival also. So, on that basis, so like, what could be the qualifying criteria for startups or businesses that they should implement or integrate generative AI in their customer offerings?
I mean, any business process, I mean, if you're talking of like, developing products versus just adopting it, I'll talk about both perspectives if you want. In terms of adoption, there are cases where you absolutely have to sort of incorporate some kind of products in your business processes, right? To make it easier for you to scale up, right? Especially during, a lot of these changes that are happening in the marketplace, things are getting more competitive, funding environment, all of these things that are happening, you want to do more with the existing set of resources that you have, people, capital, time, all of these things that you have. Again, I'll talk maybe about a sales use case. We primarily sell to sales and customer success. That's our primary target. Although a lot of other folks also use our software, right? So what you want to do is you want to have the same set of, let's say it's a sales team of like 5 people or 10 people that you have. You want to sort of be able to do more with that existing team, right? So you can adopt these AI tools that are there so that you can do coaching faster, training, onboarding can be faster, follow-ups can be easier with your customers. So if you're doing 5-7 meetings a day, you don't drop the ball. So those are the kind of things that you can if you adopt this AI products, you can sort of have your existing set of people do more or do better. Right? So that's the base for any business. That's a value prop, right? That the generative enables. Yes, so you can do better, you can do more with like AI note taker, you don't take out notes. Right? You can focus just on the customer and what they are asking and responding to them rather than taking down notes and remembering everything. Right? So that's again a very basic value prop, but that enables the sales rep to do back-to-back meetings. So you can have a 45-minute, 1-hour conversation, again have back-to-back meetings, 5-6 meetings, and you don't have to worry about like, did I forget something that the customer talked about. So this enables them to do more with the existing set of resources that you have. In terms of products, I don't know if you want to talk about.
No, I think there's all really great points, right? And there's a lot of FOMO out there, right? Fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
If I don't put Gen AI in my product, I'm like, but the point is that is not probably the way to look at it. The way to look at it is, hey, just get to the why, right? Are there things in your product, in your thing that customers are finding hard to adopt, right? So, for example, for us, right, the reason to take on the structured data problem was that people really found it hard to understand all those 1,000 metrics, right? Now, if this was a trained data scientist, maybe it would have been easier for them, but these are your traditional sellers and other people who are trying to run their day-to-day businesses. How do I solve this adoption problem, right? Now, here's where, okay, now it's really working with those users and getting that AI down to the business level and figuring out, okay, here's where I can fit in Gen AI, right? Although there's like 10 other cool things that can be done. So, but this thing is going to be there in every single industry, right? So I don't think there's a necessarily a qualifying criteria. It's really having a real good business use case. That is where the starting point is. And then again, do you have the data and the other things? All right.
I look at it the other way.
Yeah.
That don't put AI where it is not needed.
Yeah. But we don't know, right? So today the area that doesn't have AI tomorrow suddenly becomes possible, right? So you have to be watching for those, but really focus on the why, right? Why you do this? Because you're going to commit your entire company to it, your budgets to it. Really should know why you're doing that. Yeah.
Since you spoke about budget, for a mid-sized organization, what is a rough order of magnitude budget that one can look at?
That hey, let's allocate these few $1 million and then let's figure out what do we have to do. Correct? Then that they're going to hire a bunch of engineers, start building an LLM from scratch, and only then I'm going to be ready to do something. Now, here think about it as a constrained environment. What's the minimum you can kind of do here? And that can be like $10 to a few $1 million, right? It's why? Because you have to start experimenting with what is out there. Once you get to a use case that can be solved, that's when you really start think about budgets and other things, right? Because there are inference APIs and other things. Can you use those traditional APIs, or do you have to put up your own infra? All of that is going to determine, are your customers open to using, taking data and maybe using open, public APIs, or do they want this data to reside in their enterprise, or the AI has to run in their premise? Very different cost equation. What are the latencies, right? Are these going to be APIs that are getting hit every second? Or is this a process that I'm going to run once a day and then take notes and summarize this and give to you, right? That's why it's very hard to give that answer.
I think SMBs should go with products.
Definitely.
In my opinion, like SaaS products or any of the ecosystem that they are in, like the Salesforce ecosystem or HubSpot ecosystem, or like it depends upon that's there, but they can find products which work with that tool, and that sort of would be a great way to get started. Enterprise, as you mentioned, completely different ball game where you have $1 million to spend and or whatever. Like,
Yeah, but get the use case right. I think that is the main. That can make a huge difference.